From the beginning, he just kind of attached himself to me. He really was like my first child. In December, we'd gone away for a week and our tenant was here. And we also had somebody coming to feed the dogs twice a day. We got a message after New Year's to say that Jock is missing. The dogs had been very distressed because of the fireworks, and we had a wooden kind of fence, and the dogs were so scared that they bashed their way through that fence. He thought it was Jock that had gone missing, but it was actually Marcus. I phoned all the vets, I put it on Facebook, I put it on all the street WhatsApp groups just to see if anybody had seen him. I went to the SPCA and nothing. I assumed he'd been taken in by somebody because he's microchipped, then thought he was probably dead because we just had no leads at all after about 2 weeks.
The actual festive season, when New Year's and all that, that's when we have an influx. Last year it was quite bad, and we're expecting the same this year.
We can have, on average, between 5 and 8 stray animals in hospital, roughly 30% occupancy, so it's quite a large increase. Their hearing is much more sensitive than ours, so something that you hear normally, a dog will hear much louder. They are so terrified that they run blindly. They run through fences, they jump through glass, they run into traffic, they're not thinking.
The most common things you see is actually torn nails from dogs scratching at doors and fences and that sort of stuff. I've seen lacerations as well, dogs jumping through windows or just frantically trying to squeeze through a fence and cutting themselves open. And then you do get vehicle accidents as well.
It was a number of years ago, on the 5th of November, the Guy Fawkes Day. We could see the dog was unsettled, but we didn't realize to what extent. So I went out in the front door to have a look outside, and when I went out, a cracker went off. So it ran into the street, and we didn't see it again until a neighbor told us that the dog was run over, not very far from us. So we went down there and have a look, and the dog was run over. He must have been extremely scared because of all the noise around it. Wasn't used to it. Neither were we, to the extent of understanding how a dog would react when something like that happens.
It was about 2.5 months after he went missing. Somebody posted on one of the Facebook groups that there was a very skinny Ridgeback in Delta Park. I just thought it's impossible that he could have survived that long, but I got to Delta Park and we saw him, but I couldn't recognize him. He was just so thin, but even if it wasn't Marcus, this dog needed help.
If you pick up a pet, take it home, give it comfort, give it sanctuary for the night. Legally, you are bound to submit it to the SPCA. There's no time frame. If any decent human being picks up a stray in the middle of the night and takes it home to comfort it, who are we to criticize them?
I think the important point is that it's got to be in the animal's best interest. So if an animal's injured, then obviously it does need veterinary care straight away. But if not, providing it with a safe environment in your home is perfectly acceptable.
I do get a lot of phone calls before firework periods. It's mainly people are asking about sedation. They're worried about their dogs, they're worried about something happening to them, and they feel that they will be safer sedated. And, it's actually a last resort.
The ultimate solution would be not to have fireworks at all. That would be what we aim for. But that's not possible at this stage. So I do think the medication has its place.
There were 2 or 3 occasions when I actually got very close to him. And then by that stage, I'd realized it was definitely him. But yeah, we hadn't been able to get close enough to him to put a collar on him and get him home. The one day I went after work in the rain and just feeling so distressed knowing that this dog that's been used to living in a house was lying in the park with no shelter.
I was following Marcus's journey on Facebook. It was a heart-wrenching story because I'd been here on New Year's Eve and I had heard those firecrackers going off. And I could only imagine how scared that dog must have been because I saw it in my own animals. But then again, it's not just animals. There are many children who are traumatized by loud fireworks. There are old people traumatized by loud fireworks. War veterans, PTSD. These are a lot of things that people need to take into consideration. The whole point behind Shush Blairgowrie is responsible fireworks use. Now, there are legal times when you are allowed to let off fireworks. We don't dispute that and we don't want to change that. There are sparklers on the one end and there are widowmakers on the other end. We are trying to stop the widowmakers because they're the ones that cause the trauma.
Fireworks bylaws indicate clearly that fireworks should not be ignited anywhere near to a filling station, near to a hospital or old age home. Fireworks may not be ignited by minors or ignited outside of the permitted times. There is also a bylaw that stipulates very clearly that one may not ignite fireworks near animals. It's a 1,000 Rand fine for igniting fireworks near to animals.
You have certain days, either the holy days or the cultural days, and a lot of them, part of it is celebrating fireworks. So what the city has done, it said, okay, these bylaws, which are quite strict, apply, except on these certain days. So it causes a bit of confusion, and that is the problem. There's a general lack of understanding and a lack of regard of the actual bylaws.
So the bylaws clearly state where you are allowed to let off fireworks. So it's not just about the times, it's also the place. For example, it is always illegal to let off fireworks within 500 meters of a petrol station. Based on that law alone, almost 40% of the neighborhood is immediately excluded.
I got a phone call from a guy who said, I believe you're looking for a dog. We think Marcus probably got to the point where he was too weak and he was just found lying in the reeds, and this guy had managed to put his own dog's collar onto Marcus. I ran there and I just knelt next to him, and then he sniffed me and he recognized me for the first time. We literally couldn't believe it. Took him to the vet and they were really surprised that he had survived that long. He was missing for about 84 days, yeah. I think a dog year is supposed to be 7 years to a human year, so my maths is really bad, but he was missing for almost a year in his experience. He was very weak. I don't think he would have survived another 2 or 3 weeks. There were fireworks for Diwali, and it was those really loud, big bomb type ones. He was trembling, his whole body was shaking, and he is deaf. So it must just be the vibration, or he can sense it somehow. But he was petrified, which hadn't been the case before he went missing. In Blairgowrie, it seems to have gotten worse because we've been here for 8 years. And then I don't know if it was 2 or 3 years ago where it was almost those military grade bombs almost. It's distressing for everybody, for the kids, for adults. I mean, I have a heart attack every time the windows rattle. It just doesn't seem necessary to have that kind of level of noise. Celebrate, but just be considerate and be aware of what it's doing to people around you.
Even though you are doing this within your property and within the time frame, you might still be causing discomfort. Do you have to let off the loudest firecrackers? Isn't there a middle ground that you can find? Do you have to continuously do it? Cracker after cracker after cracker after cracker. Perhaps you can go to your neighbors ahead of time and saying, listen, we're having a party tonight. And we are planning on letting off firecrackers, is that okay? It's just taking other people's homes, other people's preferences into consideration as well. Having said that, the same goes for the opposite party. People do often enjoy this. People do it for religious reasons. People do it for celebratory reasons. There are times where you are legally allowed to let off fireworks. Responsibility also starts with pet owners. You must make sure that your pet is properly tagged. You must also try and keep your pet safe. If you're going away over the festive period, make sure that your pet is looked after. This issue is only going to be addressed by working at it from all angles. It starts with having a conversation within a community about how we best can make compromises for each other. And that's what consideration is about.
Look, you can phone the call center of the Metro Police. The individual will then be given a call number or a log number so that the officers can respond to the complaint. However, I want to mention that there are permitted times for the igniting of fireworks, especially over the Christmas and New Year period, on Christmas Eve, on Day of Goodwill, on New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day fireworks may also be ignited. You see, over the festive period, particularly there are huge operations by the Metro Police where a lot of fireworks get confiscated because fireworks are then sold indiscriminately and in places where it may not be sold. Any street trader may not sell fireworks, and the reason for that is because fireworks must be stored in a suitable place without causing any safety hazard.
Fireworks are an explosive. I know that when I was a child, some of my friends were injured by fireworks going off. That's one of the reasons we have the bylaws, is to ensure that there's adult supervision. Part of it is danger to humans and also danger to animals, of course, but danger to property. You know, if you fire a rocket up into the air and it comes down on a thatched roof or very dry grass, it can cause quite a serious fire.
People do not always understand the impact on animals. We understand what is happening, so we can handle it. An animal doesn't understand what is happening, and an animal cannot handle it. He or she acts according to what I would say basic animal instinct is. That kind of noise, I'm not talking about general noise, it is all of a sudden, it is like a gunshot. And I think that has a negative effect. It scares an animal, and I don't think people necessarily appreciate that.